The dress hung in the wardrobe like a ghost from another time. Its pale blue fabric faded in places where the Texas sun had kissed it through windows over the years. And Lucy Zimmerman stood before it with trembling fingers, knowing that tonight she would either wear her mother's last beautiful thing or stay home from the harvest dance altogether. Lucy's mother had died 3 years ago in 1882, when cholera swept through Taylor, Texas like a vengeful spirit, taking the good along with the bad, and leaving Lucy at 17 to care for her father and younger brother on their struggling farm just outside town. Now, in the late summer of 1885, Lucy was 20 years old, and the dress that had once made her mother the talk of every social gathering was all she had left of those happier days. The fabric was delicate cotton with tiny embroidered flowers along the neckline, the kind of work that took months to complete by hand. Her mother had sewn every stitch herself during the winter of 1878, preparing for the spring cotillion where Lucy's father had first told her he loved her. Standing in the small bedroom she shared with memories and hand-me-down furniture, Lucy held the dress against her body and looked into the cracked mirror propped against the wall. The style was outdated now, she knew that much. The other young women in Taylor would be wearing the newer fashions their mothers had ordered from catalogs, or that the town seamstress, Mrs. Patterson, had copied from magazine illustrations. High collars and bustles were all the rage, with elaborate trim and multiple layers. Her mother's dress was simpler, from an earlier time when prairie elegance meant clean lines and delicate details rather than ostentatious display. "You should wear it," her brother Daniel said from the doorway, making her jump. At 14, he was already tall and gangly, with their father's dark hair and serious eyes. "Mama would want you to go to the dance." "They will laugh at me," Lucy said quietly, folding the dress carefully back into the wardrobe. "Sarah Henderson and her friends already whisper about how we can barely keep the farm going. If I show up in a dress that is 7 years out of fashion, they will have enough gossip to last them through winter." Daniel crossed the room and put a hand on her shoulder with surprising gentleness for a boy who spent his days wrestling cattle and mending fences. "Then let them laugh. You are twice as pretty as Sarah Henderson even in your work clothes. In Mama's dress, you will be the most beautiful woman there." Lucy smiled despite herself, reaching up to squeeze her brother's hand. "You are required to say such things. You are my brother." "I am required to do chores and keep my room clean," Daniel countered. "I am not required to lie. Please go, Lucy." "You have not done anything for yourself since Mama died. You work from dawn until dark, cooking and cleaning and helping Papa with the books. You deserve one night of dancing and fun." The truth in his words settled over Lucy like the weight of her daily responsibilities. She had not realized how much she had given up in the past 3 years, how much of her youth had been spent in service to survival rather than living. The harvest dance was one of the few social events in Taylor that brought the whole community together. Ranchers and farmers, merchants and craftsmen, all celebrating another year of hard work and hoping for good fortune in the seasons to come. Music and laughter, cold cider and fresh bread, the chance to dance under lantern light and forget for a few hours that life was hard and getting harder. "All right," she heard herself say, surprising even herself. "I will wear it." Daniel's face broke into a wide grin. "Good, and Lucy. Mama's dress is not old. It is classic. There is a difference." That evening, as the sun painted the Texas sky in shades of orange and pink, Lucy stood in front of the mirror again, this time wearing the pale blue dress. She had taken in the waist slightly, as she was thinner than her mother had been, and let down the hem to accommodate her height. Her honey-colored hair was pinned up in a simple style, with a few curls framing her face. She had no jewelry except her mother's small silver locket, which she clasped around her neck with reverent care. Her father knocked softly before entering, and when he saw her, his weathered face crumpled with emotion. "You look just like her," he whispered, his voice rough. "Just like your mother the night I married her." "Papa, do not cry," Lucy said, though her own eyes were burning with tears. "It is just a dance." "It is not just anything," her father said firmly, crossing the room to take both her hands. "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you have become, Lucy. Strong and kind and beautiful. Do not let anyone make you feel less than you are. You understand me, not because of a dress or our circumstances or anything else." Lucy nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The drive into Taylor took 30 minutes in their old wagon, with Daniel handling the reins and Lucy sitting carefully to avoid wrinkling the dress. The town was decorated with ribbons and lanterns, and she could already hear the fiddle music floating through the warm evening air. The dance was being held in the largest barn on the Henderson property, as it was every year. The Hendersons owned the most successful ranch in the county, running cattle and horses on thousands of acres, and they liked to remind everyone of their prosperity whenever possible. As they pulled up to the barn, Lucy's stomach twisted with anxiety. Wagons and horses were everywhere, and she could see groups of young people laughing and talking near the entrance. The women wore dresses in rich colors, deep reds and forest greens and royal blues, with elaborate trim and fashionable silhouettes. Next to them, Lucy felt like a wildflower trying to hold its own in a cultivated garden. "Remember what Papa said," Daniel murmured as he helped her down from the wagon. "You are as good as any of them." Lucy squeezed his arm gratefully, took a deep breath, and walked toward the barn. She made it approximately 10 steps before she heard Sarah Henderson's distinctive laugh, sharp and carrying. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Sarah said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Lucy Zimmerman, is that your grandmother's dress?" Heat flooded Lucy's cheeks as heads turned in her direction. Sarah stood with 3 other young women, all dressed in the latest fashions, all wearing matching expressions of cruel amusement. Sarah herself was wearing a burgundy dress with black trim and an elaborate bustle, her dark hair arranged in an intricate style that must have taken hours. "It was my mother's," Lucy said quietly, lifting her chin despite the humiliation burning through her. "Oh, that is right," Sarah continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Your mother passed away, did she not? I suppose when you are too poor to afford a new dress, you have to make do with whatever is in the attic. How very resourceful of you." The other women tittered, and Lucy felt her eyes begin to sting. She should turn around and leave, should climb back into the wagon and go home where she would not be subjected to this public mockery. But something in her refused to give Sarah the satisfaction, some stubborn spark that was pure survival instinct after 3 years of holding her family together through sheer determination. "The dress is beautiful," Lucy said firmly. "My mother made it herself, every stitch. There is more love in this fabric than in all your fancy catalog orders combined." "Love does not make you fashionable," Sarah shot back. "It just makes you pathetic. Look at her, everyone, the belle of the pauper's ball." More laughter, and now Lucy did turn to leave, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall in front of these cruel women. She had made it 3 steps when a deep voice cut through the mockery like a knife through butter. "I would say she is the belle of this ball, actually." Lucy turned to find herself facing a man she had never seen before, and the sight of him made her breath catch in her throat. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of a storm rolling across the plains. He wore clean denim trousers and a white shirt with a leather vest, and there was a quiet confidence in the way he stood that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. He was perhaps 24 or 25, with the kind of handsome features that probably turned heads wherever he went. "Excuse me," Sarah sputtered, clearly as surprised by the interruption as Lucy was. The stranger ignored Sarah entirely, his storm-gray eyes fixed on Lucy with an intensity that made her heart race. "I am sorry, miss, but I could not help overhearing, and I felt compelled to say something. That dress you are wearing is the most elegant thing I have seen in months. It reminds me of a time when people valued craftsmanship and simplicity over ostentation. You wear it beautifully." Lucy stared at him, unable to form words. Who was this man, and why was he defending her? "And you are?" Sarah demanded, her voice sharp with indignation. "Nathan Irving," the man said, finally turning to acknowledge Sarah with a polite nod that somehow managed to be dismissive. "I just arrived in Taylor yesterday to work on the cattle drive for Mr. Henderson. I am a ranch hand and horsebreaker, and I have been traveling through Texas for the past 5 years, working where the work is good. I have seen many dances and many beautiful women, and I can tell you with complete honesty that miss." He paused, looking back at Lucy with a questioning expression. "Zimmerman," Lucy managed to whisper. "Lucy Zimmerman." "Miss Zimmerman," Nathan continued, and the way he said her name made something warm bloom in her chest, "is by far the loveliest woman at this gathering. Her dress shows character and respect for tradition, and anyone who would mock her for it is showing their own lack of class, not hers." The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah's face had turned an ugly shade of red, and her friends were staring at Nathan with a mixture of shock and admiration. Lucy herself felt frozen in place, caught between mortification and gratitude, unable to believe that a complete stranger had just come to her defense in such a public and thorough manner. Nathan extended his hand to Lucy, his expression softening into a genuine smile. "Would you do me the honor of this dance, Miss Zimmerman? Unless you are already spoken for, of course." Lucy looked at his offered hand, calloused and strong, the hand of a working man. She thought of her father's words, of Daniel's encouragement, of her mother's careful stitches in the fabric she wore. Then she thought of how it would feel to walk away now, to let Sarah's cruelty be the final word on this evening. She placed her hand in Nathan's, and his fingers closed around hers with surprising gentleness. "I would be honored," she said, and was pleased to hear that her voice was steady. He led her into the barn, leaving Sarah and her friends staring after them in stunned silence. The interior of the barn was transformed with decorations, lanterns hanging from the rafters casting a warm, golden glow over the scene. A small band was set up at one end, playing a lively reel, and couples were already spinning across the hay-strewn floor. Nathan guided Lucy to a spot near the center and turned to face her, one hand settling at her waist while the other held hers in a proper dance position. "I should tell you that I am a terrible dancer," he said conspiratorially as they began to move. "I have spent more time with horses than humans, and horses do not require much in the way of fancy footwork." Lucy found herself smiling despite everything that had just happened. "Then why did you ask me to dance?" "Because you looked like you needed rescuing, and because what I said was true. You are the most beautiful woman here, and that dress is something special." He guided her through a turn, and she was surprised to find that he was actually quite a good dancer, his movements confident and smooth. "Also, I cannot abide bullies, especially ones who pick on people for having less money than they do." "You do not even know me," Lucy said, looking up at him. This close, she could see flecks of blue in his gray eyes and a small scar near his left eyebrow. "Why would you defend me like that?" Nathan was quiet for a moment as they moved together, the music swirling around them. "My mother died when I was 15, he finally said. "Fever took her one winter, and we did not have money for a doctor or medicine. She was a seamstress, and she made all our clothes by hand, pouring love into every garment even when she was tired from working all day. After she passed, my father could not bear to part with anything she had made. I wore her handmade shirts until they fell apart, and I was not ashamed of it, because they reminded me that I had been loved." He met Lucy's eyes with a directness that made her breath catch. "When I heard that woman mocking you for wearing your mother's dress, I saw myself at 16, being laughed at by ranch hands with store-bought clothes. I wish someone had defended me then, so I defended you now." The music seemed to fade into the background as Lucy processed his words. Here was someone who understood, who knew what it was like to lose a mother too young and to hold onto the physical remnants of that love with fierce determination. "I am sorry about your mother," she said softly. "And I am sorry about yours," Nathan replied. "But I meant what I said. You honor her memory by wearing that dress with pride. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." They danced through 2 more songs, and Lucy found herself relaxing into the movement, into the comfort of Nathan's steady presence. He told her about his travels through Texas, about breaking horses and driving cattle, about sleeping under stars and learning to read the land. She told him about the farm, about caring for her father and brother, about the small joys she found in her garden and her mother's old books. "You have not left Taylor much, have you?" Nathan asked as they took a break to get some cider. "I have never left Taylor," Lucy admitted. "I was born here and I have been here every day of my life. Sometimes I dream about seeing other places, but the farm needs me." "The farm will still be there if you take time for yourself," Nathan said gently. "You cannot pour from an empty cup, Lucy." The use of her first name sent a small thrill through her, intimate and familiar despite the fact that they had just met. "You sound like my brother." "Your brother sounds like a wise young man." They were interrupted by Daniel himself, who approached with a wide grin and 2 plates of food. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, handing 1 plate to Lucy. Then he turned to Nathan and extended his hand. "I am Daniel Zimmerman, Lucy's brother. Thank you for what you did out there. That was something to see." Nathan shook his hand firmly. "Nathan Irving, your sister was gracious enough to dance with me despite my questionable skills." "You dance fine," Lucy protested, and both men laughed. The 3 of them found a quiet corner to sit and eat, and Lucy watched as Nathan and Daniel fell into easy conversation about horses and cattle. Her brother was normally shy around strangers, but Nathan had a way of putting people at ease, of asking questions and actually listening to the answers. She found herself studying Nathan's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the capable hands that had held hers with such care. "Are you staying in Taylor long?" Daniel asked, and Lucy's attention snapped back to the conversation. "That depends," Nathan said, glancing at Lucy with an expression she could not quite read. "I hired on with the Henderson Ranch for the season, but I am always looking for good reasons to stay in one place longer than planned. I have been drifting for 5 years, and lately, I have been thinking about putting down roots somewhere." "We could use help on our farm," Daniel said eagerly, ignoring Lucy's sharp look. "We have 40 acres and some cattle, and Papa is not as young as he used to be. Lucy works herself half to death trying to keep everything running." "Daniel," Lucy hissed, mortified, but Nathan was nodding thoughtfully. "What kind of help do you need?" "Everything," Daniel admitted. "Fence mending, livestock handling, plowing, planting." "We lost our main farmhand last year when he moved to San Antonio, and we have not been able to afford to replace him. We could not pay much, but we have a small cabin on the property that is empty, and Lucy is the best cook in 3 counties. Daniel Zimmerman, stop talking right now, Lucy commanded, her face burning with embarrassment. Nathan held up a hand, his expression serious. No, let him speak. I am interested. He turned to Daniel. What would the pay be, honestly? Daniel looked at Lucy, who sighed deeply. There was no point in hiding their circumstances now. We could offer room and board and maybe $10 a month, she said quietly. I know that is not much compared to what the Henderson Ranch pays, but it is all we can afford. The Hendersons are paying me $40 a month, Nathan said, and Lucy's heart sank. Of course. Why would he give up good pay to work for a struggling farm? But I have been sleeping in a bunkhouse with 15 other men who snore and smell like old boots, eating food that barely qualifies as edible, and working for a man whose daughter thinks it is acceptable to mock someone for wearing their dead mother's dress. So I am thinking that $10 a month, a private cabin, and working for good people might actually be the better deal. Lucy stared at him. You cannot be serious. I am entirely serious. Nathan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes locked on Lucy's. I told you I have been looking for a reason to stop drifting. Maybe this is it. Let me come by tomorrow and meet your father, see the farm. If he is willing to hire me, I will give my notice to Henderson and start work next week. But why? Lucy whispered. You do not know us. Nathan smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and somehow more vulnerable. I know enough. I know you are a woman who wears her mother's dress with pride. I know you have a brother who looks out for you and is not afraid to ask for help when it is needed. I know you are a good dancer and you have the kindest eyes I have ever seen. That is enough for me to want to know more. Lucy's heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the barn could hear it. This was crazy. People did not make life-changing decisions based on one dance and a shared understanding of loss. But as she looked at Nathan Irving, at the honesty in his face and the hope in his eyes, she found herself believing that maybe, just maybe, some things were meant to happen exactly this way. Come by tomorrow at noon, she heard herself say. We will be having dinner and you can meet Papa and see the farm, but I am not promising anything. Papa makes the final decision about who we hire. That is all I ask, Nathan said, and the smile he gave her made Lucy feel like the barn was suddenly too warm. They danced twice more before the evening ended, and Lucy found herself forgetting all about Sarah Henderson and her cruel words. In Nathan's arms, moving to the music under the lantern light, she felt like the belle of the ball indeed, not because of her dress or her appearance but because of the way he looked at her, like she was someone worth knowing, worth protecting, worth everything. When Daniel finally insisted they needed to head home before their father started to worry, Nathan walked them out to their wagon. The night air was cool and sweet, full of the sounds of crickets and distant laughter. Thank you for tonight, Lucy said as Nathan helped her up onto the wagon seat. For everything. Nathan kept hold of her hand for a moment longer than necessary. Thank you for the dances. I will see you tomorrow at noon, Lucy Zimmerman. The ride home passed in a blur of excitement and nervous energy. Daniel could not stop talking about how perfectly everything had worked out, how Nathan seemed like exactly what they needed, how Papa would surely agree to hire him. Lucy listened with half an ear, her mind replaying every moment of the evening, every word Nathan had spoken, every look they had shared when they arrived home. Her father was waiting up, sitting on the porch with his pipe. "Did you have a good time?" he asked as Lucy climbed down from the wagon. "The best time," Lucy said honestly, and proceeded to tell him everything, from Sarah's cruelty to Nathan's defense to the possibility of him coming to work on the farm. Her father listened without interrupting, his weathered face thoughtful in the moonlight. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "This Nathan Irving," he finally said. "You trust him?" Lucy considered the question seriously. She barely knew Nathan, had spent perhaps 2 hours in his company. But there had been something in his eyes when he spoke about his mother, something genuine and raw that resonated with her own grief and loss. "I think so," she said carefully. "I think he is a good man, Papa. And even if it turns out I am wrong, we can always let him go if he does not work out. But if I am right, he could be exactly what we need." Her father nodded slowly. "Your mother always said you had good instincts about people. If you think we should give him a chance, then that is what we will do." "But," he added, giving Lucy a knowing look, "I saw the way your eyes lit up when you talked about him. Just be careful with your heart, daughter. Cowboys like that, they have a way of drifting back out of your life just as quickly as they drifted in." Lucy kissed her father's weathered cheek. "I will be careful," she promised, though part of her wondered if it was already too late for that. That night, she hung her mother's dress carefully back in the wardrobe, smoothing the fabric with gentle hands. The evening had not gone at all as she had expected, but it had gone better in ways she could not have imagined. She fell asleep thinking about storm-gray eyes and a smile that made her feel like she could take on the world. The next morning, Lucy woke before dawn as always, but there was a new energy to her movements as she started breakfast and began the endless list of daily chores. She found herself humming as she worked, catching herself smiling for no reason at all. Daniel teased her mercilessly, but she did not care. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something other than tired and worried. She felt hopeful. By 11:30, she had changed into her second-best dress, a simple green cotton that brought out the gold in her hair, and was putting the finishing touches on dinner. She had made fried chicken, fresh bread, green beans from the garden, and an apple pie that was cooling on the windowsill. It was perhaps more food than was strictly necessary, but she wanted Nathan to see that they might be struggling, but they were not destitute, that they had pride and skills to offer. Her father had put on a clean shirt and was sitting in the front room, attempting to look casual while obviously watching the road. Daniel had groomed his hair with so much water he looked like a drowned cat. Lucy wanted to laugh at both of them, but she was too nervous herself to find much humor in the situation. At precisely noon, they heard the sound of a horse approaching. Lucy's heart leapt into her throat as she wiped her hands on her apron and went to the window. Nathan was riding a beautiful chestnut mare, sitting easy in the saddle with the natural grace of someone who had spent most of his life on horseback. He had cleaned up since the night before, wearing fresh clothes and a dark hat that shadowed his face. Her father opened the door before Nathan could knock, and Lucy hung back in the kitchen doorway, suddenly shy. "Mr. Irving," her father said, extending his hand. "Mr. Zimmerman, thank you for allowing me to visit." Nathan shook her father's hand firmly, then spotted Lucy and smiled. "Miss Zimmerman, you look lovely." "Thank you," Lucy managed, feeling her cheeks warm. "Come in, please. Dinner is ready." They gathered around the worn kitchen table, and Lucy served the food while trying not to notice how her hands were shaking slightly. But as Nathan asked her father thoughtful questions about the farm and listened intently to the answers, she began to relax. This was not a man putting on airs or trying to impress them with false promises. He was genuine and interested, and when he spoke about his own experience with farming and ranching, it was clear he knew what he was talking about. "My father had a small spread in eastern Texas before he died," Nathan explained as they ate. "Nothing fancy, maybe 50 acres and some cattle. I learned to work the land before I learned to read. After he passed, I sold the property and started drifting, doing whatever work I could find. I have driven cattle from Texas to Kansas, broken horses for ranches and private buyers, worked as a farmhand and a trail guide. I am not afraid of hard work, and I know how to do most things that need doing on a farm this size. Why did you sell your father's land? Lucy's father asked, his tone curious rather than accusatory. Nathan set down his fork, his expression distant. Because everywhere I looked, I saw ghosts. My mother in the kitchen, my father mending fences. I was 18 and angry at the world for taking them both, and I thought if I kept moving, I could outrun the grief. He looked up, meeting Lucy's father's eyes directly. I was wrong. You cannot outrun grief. You can only learn to carry it with you. And lately, I have been thinking that maybe I have run far enough. Maybe it is time to stop and build something again. Lucy's father was quiet for a moment, studying Nathan with the careful assessment of a man who had seen enough of life to recognize honesty when he heard it. The work is hard, he finally said. We have 40 acres under cultivation, 20 head of cattle, some pigs and chickens. The fences need constant mending, the barn roof leaks, and we are always one bad season away from losing everything. My daughter works like 2 men, and my son does the work of 3, but we still barely keep ahead of our debts. I cannot promise you that this will be easy or comfortable. I am not looking for easy, Nathan said. I am looking for honest work with good people. Everything else will sort itself out. Lucy watched her father's weathered face soften, saw the moment he made his decision. Then I would be glad to have your help, Nathan Irving. You can start tomorrow if you like. The cabin is small but sturdy, and Lucy will make sure you have everything you need. They shook hands across the table, and Lucy felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness that went beyond logic or reason. This was meant to happen. She did not know how she knew, but she knew. After dinner, Nathan insisted on helping clear the table despite Lucy's protests, and then the men went out to look at the farm while Lucy cleaned up. She watched through the window as her father pointed out various buildings and fields, as Nathan asked questions and nodded thoughtfully. Daniel was practically bouncing with excitement, clearly thrilled to have another man around to help with the heavy work. When they returned an hour later, Nathan looked satisfied. I will go back to the Henderson ranch and give my notice, he said. They will not be happy, but I gave them honest work for honest pay, and I owe them nothing more than common courtesy. I should be able to start here day after tomorrow if that suits you. That suits us fine, Lucy's father said, shaking Nathan's hand again. We look forward to having you, son. Nathan turned to Lucy, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Thank you for dinner. It was the best meal I have had in longer than I can remember. You are welcome, Lucy said, finding her voice. I will make sure the cabin is ready for you. I appreciate that. He hesitated, then added in a lower voice, and Lucy, I meant what I said last night. You looked beautiful in your mother's dress, and you look beautiful now. Do not let anyone make you doubt your worth. Then he was gone, riding back toward town on his chestnut mare, and Lucy stood on the porch watching until he disappeared from sight. True to his word, Nathan arrived 2 days later with all his worldly possessions packed into 2 saddlebags and a bedroll. The cabin where he would be living was set back from the main house, a single room with a fireplace, a bed, a table, and not much else. Lucy had spent the previous day cleaning it from top to bottom, putting fresh linens on the bed and wildflowers in a jar on the table. She had also left a basket with bread, cheese, and some preserves, along with a note welcoming him to the farm. When Nathan saw the cabin, he stood in the doorway for a long moment, taking it all in. Then he turned to Lucy with an expression of such genuine gratitude that she felt her eyes prickle with tears. You did not have to do all this, he said softly. I wanted you to feel welcome, Lucy replied, suddenly self-conscious about the wildflowers. Were they too much? Would he think she was being forward? But Nathan crossed the room and picked up the jar, examining the simple bouquet with the care someone might give to precious jewels. My mother used to put wildflowers on our table, he said quietly. She said they were proof that beautiful things do not have to cost money. Thank you, Lucy, for all of this. From that day forward, Nathan became part of the rhythm of the farm. He woke before dawn and worked until after sunset, mending fences and repairing the barn roof, and handling the cattle with easy competence. He was patient with Daniel, teaching him better rope techniques and how to judge the health of livestock. He was respectful to Lucy's father, asking for guidance on the specific needs of the farm while also offering suggestions based on his own experience. And with Lucy, he was unfailingly kind and increasingly present. He started joining the family for breakfast and dinner, sharing stories of his travels and listening with genuine interest to the small details of their daily lives. He helped Lucy carry water from the well, insisted on chopping all the firewood she needed, and fixed the squeaky hinge on the kitchen door that had been driving her crazy for months. They fell into an easy companionship that felt both comfortable and charged with possibility. Lucy found herself looking forward to meal times, to the moments when Nathan would catch her eye across the table and smile, to the conversations they would have while washing dishes or sitting on the porch in the evenings. 3 weeks after Nathan arrived, he asked if he could ride with Lucy into town when she went to sell eggs and buy supplies. Daniel usually accompanied her, but he was busy with other chores, so Lucy agreed, trying to ignore the flutter of excitement in her stomach at the prospect of spending time alone with Nathan. The ride into Taylor was pleasant, with Nathan keeping up a steady stream of conversation that made Lucy laugh. He had a way of finding humor in everyday situations, of turning ordinary observations into entertaining stories. By the time they reached town, Lucy's sides were aching from laughing so hard. They made their stops efficiently, selling the eggs to the general store and purchasing the supplies Lucy needed. Everything was going smoothly until they ran into Sarah Henderson on the main street. Sarah looked Nathan up and down with obvious displeasure. "So it is true," she said coldly. "You quit working for my father to work for the Zimmermans. What a terrible decision." "On the contrary," Nathan said pleasantly, taking the package Lucy was holding and adding it to his own load. "It was the best decision I have made in years. Your father runs a fine ranch, Miss Henderson, but I prefer working for people I respect." Sarah's face flushed an ugly red. "You will regret this. My father does not take kindly to being abandoned, and he has a long memory. You will never work in this county again." "I am already working in this county," Nathan pointed out reasonably, "and I am quite happy with my current situation. Now, if you will excuse us, Miss Zimmerman and I have things to do." He placed a gentle hand on Lucy's lower back, guiding her past Sarah and down the street. Lucy was shaking, whether from anger or anxiety she was not sure. "She is going to make trouble for us," she said once they were out of earshot. "Let her try," Nathan said calmly. "We have done nothing wrong. I gave her father proper notice and fulfilled my obligations. What I do after that is my business, not theirs." But Lucy knew the power the Henderson family wielded in Taylor. They could make things difficult if they wanted to, could pressure other families to exclude the Zimmermans from social events or refuse to do business with them. It was a petty, spiteful power, but it was real nonetheless. As they loaded their supplies into the wagon, Lucy felt the weight of worry settling back onto her shoulders. For a few weeks, she had been happy, genuinely happy, without the constant anxiety that had become her normal state of being. But now the real world was intruding again, reminding her that nothing good came without complications. Nathan must have sensed her mood, because he was quiet on the ride home, letting the silence stretch between them comfortably. When they were about halfway back to the farm, he pulled the wagon off the road and stopped near a grove of cottonwood trees. "What are we doing?" Lucy asked, confused. Nathan set the brake and turned to face her. "I want to show you something. Come on." He helped her down from the wagon and led her through the trees to a small clearing where a creek burbled over smooth stones. The water was clear and cold, and the trees provided dappled shade that made the whole spot feel like a secret place hidden from the world. "How did you know this was here?" Lucy asked, enchanted. "I found it my second day on the farm," Nathan admitted. "I was out checking the fence line and stumbled across it. I come here sometimes in the evenings when I need to think." He sat down on a flat rock near the water and patted the space beside him. "Sit with me for a minute." Lucy sat, very aware of how close they were, of the solid warmth of his body next to hers. The creek sang its endless song, and somewhere a bird called sweetly. "I know you are worried about what Sarah Henderson said," Nathan began. "And I know you are thinking about all the ways her family could make life harder for yours. But Lucy, you cannot live your life afraid of what people like that might do. They only have power if you give it to them." "Easy for you to say," Lucy said, though without heat. "You do not have a farm to lose, a family depending on you." "You are right," Nathan acknowledged. "I do not have those things. I gave them up years ago, and I have regretted it every day since. But what I do have is experience, and that experience has taught me that people like the Hendersons are bullies. They push because they expect you to fall. But when you stand your ground, when you refuse to be intimidated, they back down. They have to, because their power is all illusion." Lucy wanted to believe him, but fear was a hard habit to break. "And if you are wrong, if they do make things difficult?" Nathan reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. The simple gesture made Lucy's heart race. "Then we will deal with it together," he said firmly. "You are not alone anymore, Lucy. You have me, and I am not going anywhere." She turned to look at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt or uncertainty. But all she saw was steady determination and something else, something warmer and more tender that made her breath catch in her throat. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much? You barely know me." Nathan lifted his free hand and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch feather light and reverent. "Because from the moment I saw you standing in that barn wearing your mother's dress with your chin up, despite those horrible women, I knew you were someone special. Someone worth knowing, worth fighting for, and every day since has only confirmed that first impression. You are strong and kind and beautiful, Lucy Zimmerman, and if you will let me, I would like to spend whatever time I can proving to you just how extraordinary you are." Lucy felt tears pricking her eyes, but they were good tears, tears of relief and joy and something that might have been the beginning of love. "I am not extraordinary," she protested weakly. "You are to me," Nathan said simply. Then, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned in and kissed her. The kiss was gentle and sweet, a question rather than a demand, and Lucy answered it by pressing closer, by lifting her free hand to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart beating as fast as her own. The world narrowed down to this moment, this connection, this perfect crystallization of possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you," he said softly. "I know it is fast and probably foolish, but I need you to know. I am falling in love with you, and I want to build a life here with you if you will have me." Lucy's answer was to kiss him again, pouring 3 years of loneliness and grief and hard work into the embrace, letting herself believe for the first time that maybe, just maybe, she could have something for herself. When they finally climbed back into the wagon and headed home, Lucy's worries about Sarah Henderson seemed distant and unimportant. Whatever came, they would face it together. The next few weeks passed in a golden haze of work and growing affection. Nathan and Lucy stole moments together whenever they could, secret smiles across the dinner table, hands brushing as they worked side by side, stolen kisses in the barn or by the creek. Her father and Daniel pretended not to notice, but Lucy caught them exchanging knowing looks and private smiles. The farm was thriving under Nathan's care. The fences were mended, the barn roof was patched, and the cattle were in better health than they had been in years. Nathan had a gift for working with animals, a patient gentleness that made even the most stubborn creatures trust him. He taught Daniel everything he knew, and Lucy watched her brother blossom under the attention of someone who took him seriously and treated him like a man rather than a child. But happiness, Lucy was learning, was often a fragile thing. 6 weeks after Nathan arrived, trouble came knocking in the form of Marcus Henderson, Sarah's father and one of the wealthiest men in the county. He arrived in an expensive carriage with 2 ranch hands, and the grim set of his jaw told Lucy this was not a social call. Her father came out of the house to greet him, with Lucy and Daniel flanking him. Nathan emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his trousers, his expression carefully neutral. "Zimmerman," Henderson said without preamble, "I am here about your farmhand. What about him?" Lucy's father replied calmly. "He broke a contract with me," Henderson stated. "He was hired for the full season and he quit after 3 weeks. That is breach of contract, and I am here to collect damages." Nathan stepped forward, his voice level. "I had no contract, Mr. Henderson. I was hired as a day worker, paid monthly, with no obligation beyond giving proper notice, which I did. I worked my final week and collected my wages. There was no contract. I have a contract that says otherwise." Henderson pulled a paper from his coat pocket and held it up. "Signed and witnessed." Nathan's expression darkened. "Let me see that." Henderson handed it over and Nathan examined it carefully. Lucy watched his jaw tighten as he read. "This is forged," he said flatly. "That is not my signature, and I never agreed to any such terms. I am a drifter, Mr. Henderson. I have never signed a seasonal contract in my life because I never know where I will want to be in 3 months. Are you calling me a liar?" Henderson's voice was dangerously quiet. "I am saying this contract is false," Nathan replied, keeping his tone respectful but firm. "And I believe you know it is false. This is retaliation because your daughter is angry that I chose to work elsewhere." Henderson's face flushed with anger. "How dare you bring my daughter into this? You owe me $200 in damages for breach of contract. If you cannot pay, then I will take it from your employer here, since he is benefiting from your stolen labor." "That is ridiculous," Lucy's father said sharply. "Nathan was under no obligation to keep working for you." "The contract says otherwise," Henderson repeated. "I will see you in front of the circuit judge when he comes through next month. Until then, you would be wise to come up with the money, or I will put a lien on this farm." He climbed back into his carriage and left, his ranch hands following behind. The 4 of them stood in the yard, staring after the departing vehicle in stunned silence. "Can he do that?" Daniel finally asked, his voice small. "Can he take the farm?" "Not without a fight," Lucy's father said grimly. "But a court case will cost money we do not have, and Henderson knows it. This is about forcing us into debt, so we have to sell out." Nathan looked stricken. "This is my fault. I brought this down on you. Maybe I should just leave, go somewhere else where he cannot use me against you." "Absolutely not," Lucy said fiercely, grabbing his arm. "That is exactly what he wants. He wants to separate us, to punish us for standing up to his daughter. We are not giving him that satisfaction." Her father nodded slowly. "Lucy is right. If we give in now, Henderson will know he can push us around whenever he wants. We need to fight this, but we need to do it smart." Over the next few weeks, they prepared for the court case. Nathan asked around town and learned that Henderson had a reputation for questionable business practices, for using his wealth and influence to bully smaller farmers and ranchers into unfavorable deals. But getting people to testify against him was another matter entirely. No one wanted to risk the Henderson family's wrath. Lucy spent her days in a constant state of anxiety, worrying about losing the farm, about Nathan leaving, about her father's health as the stress took its toll. She threw herself into work, as if by keeping busy she could somehow hold everything together through sheer force of will. Nathan tried to maintain his usual optimism, but Lucy could see the guilt eating at him. He worked even harder than before, as if he could somehow make up for the trouble he had brought to their doorstep. At night, when they stole moments alone, he held her with a kind of desperate tenderness that broke her heart. "We will get through this," she whispered to him one evening as they sat by the creek. "I do not care what Henderson does. I am not letting you go." Nathan pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I love you, Lucy. I think I have loved you since I saw you standing in that barn wearing your heart on your sleeve, but I cannot let you lose your home because of me. This is not your fault," Lucy insisted. "And besides, you are part of this home now, part of this family. Where you go, I go." He pulled back to look at her, his storm-gray eyes intense. "What are you saying?" Lucy took a deep breath, knowing she was about to say something that would change everything but unable to hold the words back any longer. "I am saying that I love you too. And if we lose the farm, if we have to start over somewhere else, then we will do it together. You and me. I am not afraid of hard work or uncertainty. I am only afraid of losing you." Nathan's kiss was answer and promise all rolled into one, a seal on the commitment they were making to each other. When they finally pulled apart, there were tears on both their faces, but they were smiling. The day of the court hearing arrived with oppressive heat and gathering storm clouds. The circuit judge set up in Taylor's small courthouse, and the building was packed with curious townspeople eager to see the drama unfold. Lucy sat with her father and Daniel in the front row, while Nathan stood before the judge looking calm despite the stakes. Henderson presented his case first, producing the forged contract and claiming that Nathan had cost him significant money by leaving during crucial roundup time. His lawyer was smooth and practiced, painting a picture of Nathan as an irresponsible drifter who broke his word and took advantage of honest employers. Then it was Nathan's turn. He had no lawyer, could not afford one, so he represented himself. Lucy held her breath as he approached the judge, knowing that everything depended on this moment. "Your Honor," Nathan began, his voice steady and clear, "I have never signed a contract for seasonal work in my life. I am a drifter by trade, and the whole point of drifting is that you do not tie yourself down to one place. That signature is not mine, and I can prove it." He produced a letter he had written to a friend in another county, along with several other documents bearing his signature. "As you can see, my actual signature looks nothing like the one on that contract. The writing is similar but not identical. Someone copied my hand but did not get it quite right." The judge examined the documents carefully, comparing them to the contract. His expression remained neutral, but Lucy thought she saw a flicker of interest in his eyes. "Furthermore," Nathan continued, "I would like to call a witness. Mrs. Patricia Carver, would you please stand?" An elderly woman in the back of the courtroom rose slowly. Lucy recognized her as the widow who ran the boarding house in town. "Mrs. Carver, would you tell the court what you told me last week?" Nathan asked. The old woman's voice was thin but clear. "I was at the Henderson Ranch delivering laundry the day Mr. Irving gave his notice. I overheard Mr. Henderson and his daughter Sarah talking about how they were going to teach him a lesson for embarrassing her. Sarah said something about a contract, and Mr. Henderson laughed and said that nobody would take a drifter's word over his." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge banged his gavel for silence. "Why are you only coming forward now, Mrs. Carver?" the judge asked. "Because I am old and tired and I do not have much left to lose," the woman said simply. "But I have watched the Henderson family push people around for 30 years, and I am sick of it. That boy did nothing wrong except stand up for a nice girl at a dance. He does not deserve this." Henderson was on his feet, his face purple with rage. "She is lying. She is a bitter old woman who—" "That is enough," the judge said sharply. "Mr. Henderson, I am inclined to believe Mrs. Carver. I have heard rumors about your business practices before, and this supposed contract does indeed appear suspicious. I am dismissing this case with prejudice. Mr. Irving, you are free to work where you choose. And Mr. Henderson, I suggest you be very careful about bringing frivolous lawsuits to my court in the future." The relief that swept through Lucy was so intense she felt dizzy. Nathan turned to find her in the crowd, and the smile on his face was like the sun breaking through clouds. Around them, people were already talking, the story of the Henderson family's comeuppance spreading like wildfire. Outside the courthouse, Mrs. Carver accepted their thanks with a gracious nod. "Your mother was kind to me when my husband died," she told Lucy. "She brought me food and sat with me when I was lonely. I never forgot that. This is the least I could do for her daughter." That night, the Zimmerman farm celebrated with a proper dinner, and Nathan asked Lucy's father for permission to court Lucy officially. Her father gave his blessing with a smile, saying that if Nathan could face down Marcus Henderson in court, he could certainly handle being part of their family. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Autumn came to Texas with cooler temperatures and the promise of a good harvest. Nathan and Lucy grew closer every day, their love deepening from that first spark of attraction into something solid and enduring. They talked about their future, about eventually getting married and having children, about building a life together on the land they both loved. When Nathan finally proposed, it was not with grand gestures or elaborate planning. They were sitting by the creek, their special place, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. He simply took her hand and said, "Marry me, Lucy. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." Lucy said yes without hesitation, and when they returned to the house to share the news, her father opened a bottle of wine he had been saving for a special occasion, and they toasted to love and second chances and the courage to stand up for what mattered. They were married in the spring of 1886, in a simple ceremony at the small church in Taylor. Lucy wore her mother's blue dress, altered once again to fit her perfectly, and she felt her mother's presence like a blessing as she walked down the aisle to Nathan. Daniel stood as Nathan's best man, grinning so wide his face looked like it might split. Lucy's father gave her away with tears in his eyes, whispering that her mother would have loved Nathan. The whole town turned out for the wedding, and even some of the Henderson ranch hands showed up, having quit working for Marcus Henderson after his behavior in court became public knowledge. Sarah Henderson herself was notably absent, having left Taylor shortly after the trial to live with relatives in Houston. The reception was held at the farm, with tables set up under the cottonwood trees and music provided by local musicians. Lucy danced with Nathan under the stars, feeling happier than she had ever thought possible. This was what her mother had wanted for her, she realized. Not wealth or status or fashionable dresses, but this bone-deep contentment, this certainty of being loved and cherished. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked as they swayed together. "My mother," Lucy admitted. "About how she would have loved you, about how wearing her dress brought me to you." Nathan pulled her closer. "Then I will be grateful to that dress for the rest of my life." They spent their wedding night in the cabin that Nathan had been living in, which they had cleaned and decorated to serve as their first home together. It was small and simple, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect. In the months and years that followed, Nathan and Lucy built a life that was everything they had hoped for and more. The farm prospered under their combined efforts. Nathan's skill with animals and Lucy's head for business made them a formidable team. They paid off the farm's debts and even managed to buy an additional 20 acres from a neighbor who was moving west. Daniel grew into a fine young man, eventually taking over more and more of the daily farm operations as their father aged. He met a girl named Emma at a church social, and Lucy had the joy of watching her brother fall in love just as she had. Lucy's father lived to see his first grandchild, a son that Lucy and Nathan named Thomas, after Nathan's father. The old man held his grandson with trembling hands and said it was the happiest day of his life. He passed away peacefully in his sleep 6 months later, and they buried him next to Lucy's mother on a hill overlooking the farm. 2 years after Thomas came a daughter, whom they named Sarah, though not after Sarah Henderson. Lucy had found her mother's diary and discovered that Sarah had been her mother's middle name, a family name passed down through generations. Then came another son, James, and finally, when Lucy was 30, a second daughter named Rose. Through it all, through the joys and sorrows, the good harvests and the lean years, Nathan remained Lucy's rock and her home. He kept his promise to make her happy, finding small ways every day to show his love. Fresh wildflowers on the table, fixing things before she even noticed they were broken, holding her close on difficult days, and celebrating with her on good ones. They never became wealthy, but they were comfortable and, more importantly, they were content. The farm that had been a source of stress and worry became a place of peace and plenty, a home in the truest sense of the word. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Lucy by having a portrait painted of her wearing her mother's blue dress, which she had carefully preserved all these years. The artist captured not just her features but the strength and kindness in her eyes, the quiet confidence she had grown into over the years. "So our children will always remember," Nathan said when he showed her the finished painting, "what a remarkable woman their mother is." Lucy cried, of course, but they were happy tears. She hung the portrait in the front room where everyone could see it, a reminder of where they had started and how far they had come. As the years passed and their children grew, Lucy and Nathan made sure to tell them the story of how they met, of the dance where cruel words had turned into unexpected romance. They taught their children about standing up for what was right, about not judging people by their circumstances, about the power of kindness and courage. Thomas grew up to be a rancher, taking after his father's love of animals and open spaces. Sarah became a teacher, sharing her intelligence and compassion with new generations. James took over the farm, proving to have inherited both his mother's business sense and his father's skill with the land. And Rose, their youngest, became a seamstress, creating beautiful clothes with the same dedication to craftsmanship that her grandmother had shown in that blue dress so many years ago. By the time Lucy and Nathan celebrated their 25th anniversary in 1911, they were grandparents several times over. The farm had expanded to over 100 acres, and the Zimmerman name was respected throughout the county. People often asked Nathan what his secret was, how he had built such a successful life starting from nothing but a horse and 2 saddlebags. His answer was always the same. I met a woman in a blue dress who taught me that home is not a place you run from but a place you build one day at a time, with the people you love. And Lucy, hearing him say it for the 100th time, would still feel her heart swell with love, still remember that night in the barn when a stranger had called her the belle of the ball and changed her life forever. They spent their later years sitting on the porch they had built together, watching sunsets and grandchildren with equal pleasure, holding hands like they had by the creek on that afternoon when Nathan first told her he was falling in love. The years had etched lines on their faces and threaded silver through their hair, but the love in their eyes remained as fresh and bright as it had been that first night. "You ever regret it?" Lucy asked him once, when they were both past 60. "Giving up the drifting life to settle down here?" Nathan looked at her with those storm-gray eyes that still made her breath catch, even after all these years. "Lucy, my love, every day with you has been an adventure. I have traveled to more countries of the heart with you than I ever could have seen with my feet. I regret nothing." On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1936, their children and grandchildren gathered for a celebration that was talked about in Taylor for years afterward. The whole town came to honor the couple who had become something of a local legend, the drifter and the farmer's daughter who had stood up to the richest family in the county and built a life on love and hard work. Lucy wore her mother's blue dress one last time, carefully preserved over 5 decades. It was fragile now, the fabric thin and delicate, but it still fit, and when Nathan saw her in it, his eyes filled with tears. "You are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," he said, and kissed her with all the tenderness of 50 years of devotion. They danced that night under the stars, surrounded by the family they had created and the community they had built. As they moved slowly together, Lucy thought about that frightened girl who had almost stayed home from a dance, who had almost let cruel words define her worth. She thought about how one moment of courage, one decision to hold her head high and honor her mother's memory, had led to this incredible life. "Thank you," she whispered to Nathan as they danced. "For what?" he asked, though he was smiling like he knew. "For seeing me, for choosing me, for building this beautiful life with me." Nathan held her closer. "Thank you for letting me stay, for teaching me that running was not the answer, for showing me what home really means." They lived another decade together, healthy and content, watching their grandchildren have children of their own. They worked the farm until their bodies would not let them anymore, and even then, they sat on the porch and offered advice and stories to whoever would listen. Nathan passed away first, peacefully in his sleep at 75, with Lucy holding his hand. At his funeral, the church was packed with people whose lives he had touched, and Lucy stood strong and dry-eyed through the service, knowing that he would want her to celebrate what they had shared rather than mourn what was lost. But that night, alone in the bed they had shared for 52 years, she allowed herself to weep, to feel the full weight of losing the love of her life. She wore her nightgown and her mother's locket, and she held Nathan's pillow close, breathing in the faint scent of him that still lingered. Lucy lived another 5 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, tending a small garden and sitting by the creek where Nathan had first told her he was falling in love. When she finally passed away at 80, peacefully in her sleep like her husband before her, her children found her wearing her mother's locket and holding a photograph from their wedding day. They buried her next to Nathan on the hill overlooking the farm, the same hill where her parents were buried. The headstone was simple but perfect. Lucy Zimmerman Irving, beloved wife, mother, and friend. She wore her heart on her sleeve and her mother's dress with pride. The blue dress was preserved and passed down through the family, along with the story of how it had brought two souls together. Rose, their youngest daughter, eventually donated it to the local historical society, where it was displayed with a plaque telling the story of the dance. The ridicule, the cowboy who had stood up for love, and the life they had built together. Generations of Taylor residents would visit that display and hear the story of Lucy and Nathan, of how courage and kindness could overcome cruelty, how love could bloom in the most unexpected places, how a simple dress could change the course of two lives. Young women facing their own struggles would stand before that faded blue fabric and draw strength from Lucy's story. Young men would learn from Nathan's example that true strength lies in standing up for what is right, in seeing worth where others see weakness. The farm remained in the family for another 3 generations, each one adding their own stories to its legacy. But they all remembered the foundation Lucy and Nathan had built, the love that had transformed a struggling piece of land into a thriving home, the courage that had faced down bullies and hardship and doubt. And sometimes, on warm spring evenings when the cottonwood trees whispered in the breeze, people swore they could see 2 figures by the creek, holding hands and watching the sunset together, still in love after all these years, still dancing to music only they could hear. The dress, they said, had been magical after all. Not because of any supernatural power, but because it had carried a mother's love forward into her daughter's life, had given Lucy the courage to honor her past while building her future, had been the bridge between grief and joy, between loneliness and love. It was a dress that had been ridiculed and championed, outmoded and timeless, simple and extraordinary. But most of all, it was a dress that had witnessed a love story for the ages, a reminder that the most beautiful things in life often come in the simplest packages, and that true love sees past fashion and circumstance to the heart underneath. The story of Lucy Zimmerman and Nathan Irving became part of Taylor's history, told and retold with various embellishments over the decades. But the core remained the same: a young woman's courage, a cowboy's gallantry, and a love that built something lasting from humble beginnings. It was a story that reminded people that even in the hardest times, even when faced with cruelty and doubt, love and kindness could prevail. And in a small historical society in Taylor, Texas, a faded blue dress with tiny embroidered flowers still hangs in a climate-controlled case, a silent witness to the truth that some things, some loves, some moments of courage, never truly fade. They live on in the stories we tell, in the lessons we learn, in the lives we choose to build with the people who see us for who we truly are. The dress had been called old-fashioned and inappropriate, had been mocked and scorned. But it had also been called beautiful by the right person at the right time, and that had made all the difference. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice speaking up, one person seeing worth where others see weakness, one moment of courage in the face of cruelty, to change everything. Lucy and Nathan's story was proof of that truth, a testament to the power of love to transform not just 2 lives but an entire community, rippling outward through generations in ways they never could have imagined on that night in 1885, when a cowboy called a ridiculed woman the Belle of the dance, and meant every word. Their love story became legend, their courage became inspiration, and their life together became proof that the best things in life are worth fighting for, worth standing up for, worth believing in even when the odds seem impossible. From a moment of humiliation came a lifetime of joy. From cruel words came kind ones that changed everything. From an old dress came a new beginning. And that, their descendants would say with pride, was the legacy of Lucy and Nathan Irving. Not wealth or status or fame, but the simple, extraordinary truth that love, real love, the kind that sees you and chooses you and stands by you through everything, is worth more than all the fashionable dresses and social approval in the world. It was a lesson learned in a barn in Taylor, Texas in 1885, and it remained true long after both of them had gone, a gift they left behind for anyone wise enough to listen. The end of their mortal story was just the beginning of their legacy, living on in descendants who carried their strength, in a community that remembered their courage, in a dress that told their tale. Lucy Zimmerman Irving and Nathan Irving had lived fully, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. And really, what more could anyone ask from a life well lived?